16 bodies, same city, same water, all within months of each other. And the mayor standing up there telling folks ain't nothing to worry about? Make it make sense. Because right now, Houston got a problem they don't want to name. Buffalo Bayou Park, if you from Houston, you know it. 2,500 miles of waterways cutting through the city. People jog there, ride bikes, take their evening walks. It's supposed to be peaceful, a place to clear your head after a long day. But this year turned that peace into something else entirely. It started quiet, one body, then another. Then the calls started coming in so regular that folks couldn't keep track no more. By the time we hit fall, the count was climbing faster than anybody wanted to admit. And the scariest part? Officials kept saying the same thing over and over. Nothing to see here, no connection, no serial killer, just coincidence. Girl, let me tell you something. When bodies start stacking up in the same spots month after month, that word coincidence starts losing its meaning real quick. The timeline is what gets you, because once you see it laid out, once you really look at the dates and the locations, you start asking questions that nobody in charge seems willing to answer. May 9th, they found a body in Buffalo Bayou. Okay, tragic, but it happens in a city this size, right? June 11th, another one. Different part of the Bayou, but still. 2 bodies in a month starts raising eyebrows. Then summer hit and things got worse, way worse. August brought 2 more. August 21st, then August 27th. Now we have 4 bodies. 4 people pulled from Houston's waterways. And still, officials talking about isolated incidents. Still saying don't panic.
Killer loose in Houston, Texas. Let me say that again. There is no evidence that there's a serial killer loose on the streets of Houston.
But September is when Houston really started paying attention, because September is when the bodies started dropping so fast. People couldn't ignore it no more. September 15th, early morning, they found 21-year-old Jade McKissick in Bayou, University of Houston student. She'd gone missing after leaving a bar in Midtown. Her family had been looking for her. Now they had their answer, and it wasn't the one they wanted. Same day, not even 12 hours later, they pulled another body from Bayou, 43-year-old Rodney Ricardo Chapman. 2 bodies in one day, September 16th. Next morning, 24-year-old Seth Joseph Hansen found in White Oak Bayou. That's 3 bodies in 2 days. September 18th, 63-year-old Arnulfo Alvarado, Buffalo Bayou. September 20th, 66-year-old Michael Andrea Rice, Buffalo Bayou again. 5 bodies in 6 days. 5 families getting the worst news of their lives. 5 more names added to a list that kept growing. And the city said, don't worry, no pattern here, no serial killer, just unfortunate circumstances. Make it make sense. September 26th, they found another one. A black woman looked to be under 30. Nobody knew who she was at first. The medical examiner put out a description asking for help identifying her. About 5'3", 120 pounds, short black hair. She had a tattoo on her wrist. 3 8s. 888. She was wearing a black t-shirt with the word beautiful on it and jeans. It took time, but eventually they identified her. Michaela Miller. Another name, another family with questions nobody could answer. But it didn't stop there, because by the time October rolled around, Houston was already bracing for the next one. And sure enough, October 8th, White Oak Bayou gave up another body. A man. Cause of death undetermined, just like most of the others. That's 16 people pulled from Houston's waterways in less than 6 months. And that's just the ones they found. Some folks online started calling it the Buffalo Bayou Killer. Others said Bayou Killer. The name didn't matter as much as the fear that came with it, because whether it was one person, or 10 people, or just a convenient dumping ground for the worst kind of evil. The result was the same: bodies in the water, families without answers, and a city that couldn't figure out if it should be scared or if it should trust the people telling them everything was fine. September 23rd. That's when the mayor decided he'd had enough of the speculation. John Whitmire called a press conference, brought Police Chief Noah Diaz with him, and he came with a message he wanted to make real clear.
We do not have any evidence that there is a serial killer loose in Houston, Texas. Let me say that again. There is no evidence that there is a serial killer loose on the streets of Houston.
He said it twice, like saying it twice would make people believe it more. He went on, blamed social media, said people just wanted clicks and likes, said they were spreading fear for attention, called it all a bunch of bull. Chief Diaz backed him up, said there was no evidence connecting any of the deaths, said the medical examiner would determine cause of death for each case, said rumors create fear and anxiety and people needed to rely on verified information. Captain Salam Zia from the Homicide Division was there too. He repeated what the chief said: no evidence, no connection. Wait for the medical examiner. But here's the thing. The medical examiner was taking forever, because determining how somebody died when they've been in water for days or weeks, that's not quick work. Decomposition happens fast. In Texas heat, forensic evidence gets washed away. Toxicology reports take months, 8 months or more, some people were saying. And Houston's medical examiner office was backed up, way backed up. So while officials were telling people not to worry, they also couldn't tell people how these folks died, couldn't say if it was murder or accident or drowning or something else, couldn't give families closure, couldn't give the community answers. All they could say was no serial killer. Like that was supposed to be enough. Moving on to what the community was actually saying, because social media wasn't buying what officials were selling, not even a little bit. One woman who worked at Buffalo Bayou Park made a video breaking down the timeline. She listed every body found, every date, and she ended it with a simple message: y'all better be careful and be safe. Another man named Darius got on TikTok and said what a lot of parents were thinking.
You know, that could possibly be my baby girl or my Kayla out there one day and get snatched up and get found in a bayou. That just really bothers me, you know? And the police is clearly having a problem doing their job, right? Because I'm not understanding after the first body, why aren't there people staking out and watching? And then there were 5 bodies.
That question hit different. Because he was right. After the first few bodies, why wasn't there more police presence? Why no surveillance cameras? Why no undercover officers posted up near the bayous at night? Houston's a major city. They got cameras everywhere else. Traffic cameras, surveillance in downtown, but the bayous, where bodies keep turning up, nothing. Some folks had theories. Maybe the city broke, budget too tight to add more security. Maybe they didn't want to spook the killer into stopping, because if the killer stops, he's harder to catch. Maybe they were using people as bait. That last one sound wild, but think about it. If you pretending there's no serial killer, if you acting like everything normal, maybe you hoping the killer gets comfortable, maybe you hoping he slips up. But that's a dangerous game to play with people's lives. And then there were the folks who said it wasn't a serial killer at all, just a dumping ground. Houston got a high murder rate, a lot of crime, a lot of gang activity, a lot of people who need to get rid of bodies. And a bayou, dark, deep water that runs for miles, that's convenient, real convenient. So maybe it wasn't one person, maybe it was 10 different people, 10 different crimes, all using the same solution. But that don't make it better. That actually might make it worse, because if it's one killer, you catch him and it stops. But if it's multiple killers, all using the bayous as their personal graveyard, that's a whole different problem. Either way, Houston had bodies, 16 of them, and counting. Now officials could say whatever they wanted, but experts who actually study this kind of thing, they weren't so quick to dismiss what was happening. Tracy Wald, former FBI and CIA agent, she looked at the situation and said what a lot of people were already thinking. It's a lot of bodies. She didn't sugarcoat it. She said,
listen, I think it's a lot of bodies. I hate to be so blunt. Jesse, I understand, Houston, there are bayous, right? This is very common. There are waterways in these areas. That part's not unusual. but in my opinion, the volume, right? The volume over, a 7-month period, or to me, piques my curiosity.
She talked about how investigators would approach this. First thing, autopsy. What was the cause of death? If they all died the same way, that's a pattern. If they got similar injuries, that's a pattern. If they all drowned but got drugs in their system, that's a pattern. Then you look at the victims. Who were they? Did they know each other? Did they frequent the same places? Did they have the same routine? Did their phones show they were in the same locations before they died? Because here's the thing about serial killers. They target specific kinds of people, specific age range, specific gender, specific race, specific lifestyle. That's how you catch them. You find the pattern in who they choosing. But Houston's Bayou victim, they were all over the place. Different ages, different races, different backgrounds. 21-year-old college students, 43-year-old men, 66-year-old folks, Black, white, Latino, men and women. That diversity made some people say, see, can't be a serial killer. Serial killers have a type. But others said that just means it's not a traditional serial killer. Could be cartel, could be sex trafficking, could be gang related, could be somebody who kills for different reasons than the usual suspects. Tracy Walter pointed out something else too, something that made a lot of sense.
Very convenient for them to be able to do, right? You don't have to necessarily clean, a crime scene or clean a body and make sure that you haven't left any kinds of forensic evidence behind. Also, throwing a phone in water is really going to make a phone very difficult. I don't know if phones were on their bodies when they were found. That I wouldn't know. But let's just say they were. Everyone's attached to their phone in this day and age. It will make it very difficult and time consuming to try to obtain any kind of data from that. So in all honesty, putting a body in water is actually a great way to hide evidence.
So yeah, dumping bodies in the bayou is actually smart, real smart. And that made people even more nervous because whoever doing this, whether it's one person or multiple people, they know what they're doing. They know how to cover their tracks. Another expert criminologist, Dr. Debbie Goodman, she broke down why people so fascinated by this case, why it went viral.
And foremost, the topic in and of itself of murder is so mysterious to people, right? As we know, it becomes very intriguing, very fascinating. So as soon as somebody thinks that there's any category of murder, whether it's double homicide, quadruple, serial murder, mass murder, family-based, school-based, workplace-based, it really captures the attention.
She said investigators got to look at fact pattern, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. They got to look at victimology, find commonalities, figure out if there's a connection everybody missing. But she also said something important.
Serial murders in our modern day society is really not as common as, let's say, decades ago.
That's why some people were saying if this is a serial killer, you got to be real careful, real methodical. He learned from past mistakes. He knows what got other killers caught, and he's avoiding all of that. And that's what made this whole thing even more terrifying. If it is one person, he's good, real good, good enough to stay invisible while bodies pile up. So everybody waiting on the medical examiner, because that's the only way to know for sure what happened to these people. And slowly, real slowly, some results started coming back. Anthony Azua, 33 years old, his body was recovered way back in March. And after months of waiting, the medical examiner finally gave a cause of death. Drowning, that was it. Just drowning. No mention of drugs, no mention of trauma, no mention of anything else, just drowning. But here's what that don't tell you. Did he fall in? Did somebody push him? Was he unconscious when he hit the water? Was he running from somebody? You can drown a whole lot of ways. And drowning as a cause of death don't explain which one. For most of the other victims, cause of death still pending, still waiting on toxicology, still waiting on full autopsy reports, still waiting on answers that might not come for months. The Harris County Medical Examiner's Office was overwhelmed. They had at least 22 bodies from the Bayous through September. Then the October body made it 23. And that's just the Bayou cases. They got regular murders, car accidents, overdoses, natural deaths. All of that got to be processed too. And toxicology, that takes forever. 8 months or more, according to some folks, because they backed up, way backed up, don't have enough staff, don't have enough resources. And the city definitely not about to increase their budget to speed things up. So families stuck in limbo. They know their loved one is gone. They know where they were found, but they don't know how they died. Don't know if somebody killed them. Don't know if they could have been saved. Don't know nothing except that their person ain't coming home. That's cruel, real cruel. And it made people even more frustrated with officials. Because how you gonna stand up there and say no serial killer when you don't even know how half these people died yet? How you ruling something out before you got all the facts? One person in the comments said it best. Unfortunately, no one can even view the body. Once your loved one dies, you can't even go to the morgue here. Then homicide doesn't investigate thoroughly. Part of the investigation is a toxicology report, which they are banking on will show drugs or alcohol. And homicide doesn't have enough staff to give it that much time, nor honestly do they care if it doesn't fit their cookie cutter mold of a murder. And it makes the city officials look bad if it's a serial killer, so they'll never claim it. Period. That right there is the real issue. If you admit you got a serial killer, that makes the city look bad. Makes it look like you can't protect your citizens. Makes it look like you losing control. Affects tourism, affects business, affects everything. So it's easier to just say it's not a serial killer. It's easier to say these are isolated incidents, unrelated tragedies, nothing to worry about. But when the bodies keep coming, when the timeline keeps getting longer, when families keep losing people and getting no answers, that nothing to worry about starts sounding real hollow. Let me tell you something. The people of Houston were not staying quiet. They were loud, real loud, and they had every right to be. Social media was on fire. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Everybody had something to say. And some of the theories, some of them made more sense than what officials were putting out. One popular theory, it's not a serial killer. It's just a dumping ground. Houston got a high murder rate, a lot of gang violence, a lot of domestic situations that turn deadly, a lot of people who need to disappear a body. In the Bayou, that's the easiest solution. So yeah, you got 16 bodies, but they from 16 different killers, 16 different crimes, all ending up in the same place. That actually makes sense when you think about it. Houston's a big city, almost 8 million people in the greater metro area. With that many people, you're gonna have crime, you're gonna have violence, you're gonna have people who kill for all kinds of reasons. And they all need somewhere to put the bodies. But some folks said, nah, there's too many coincidences. One person commented, there's no such thing as a coincidence that happens multiple times. Another theory, it's somebody who knows what they're doing. Maybe a cop, maybe a criminal justice student, maybe somebody in law enforcement who knows how investigations work, who knows how to avoid leaving evidence, who knows what mistakes not to make. Somebody said, it's a cop or a criminal justice student. Maybe a soldier in training or a veteran. That's dark, real dark, but it's not impossible. Wouldn't be the first time somebody with law enforcement training used that knowledge for evil. Then you had people saying it might be cartel related. Cartels got a presence in Houston. Everybody knows that they move drugs through the city. They got connections. They got people. And when people become problems, those people gotta disappear. The Bayou, that's convenient. Girl, some folks even brought up supernatural explanations. It's either a serial killer or supernatural. Witchcraft, curses, something pulling people to the water. Now that one's a stretch, but it shows you how desperate people were for any explanation that made sense. Because what officials were saying definitely wasn't making sense. And then there was the fear, the real, genuine fear. People who used to walk Buffalo Bayou at night, not no more. People who jog those trails, finding new routes. Parents keeping their kids away from the water. Women especially being extra careful because let's be real, a lot of people suspected these victims were women, even though the bodies included men too. One woman said, the way I probably passed by him when I would go walk at night. This is scary. Another said, I don't go out at night at all. That's what this did to Houston. It took away places people loved, places they felt safe, places they used to go to relax and clear their minds. Now those places felt dangerous, haunted, like death was just waiting in the water. But hey, some folks were still brave, or maybe just stubborn. They kept jogging, kept biking, kept walking. One person said they've been riding their bike on Buffalo Bayou for 2 nights straight and hadn't seen no serial killer. Another said, I was here last night on the scooters. I'm still alive. But the question hanging over all of it was for how long? How long before the next body turns up? How long before somebody else goes missing? How long before it's somebody you know? Because that's the thing about cases like this. It feels distant until it don't. It feels like something happening to other people until it's your daughter, your son, your friend, your coworker. And nobody in Houston wanted to wait around to find out if they'd be next. Mayor Whitmire kept trying. He really did. Every time another body turned up, every time social media exploded with fear and speculation.
We have 2,500 miles of bayous or waterways in Houston, Texas.
He blamed politics, blamed people trying to make him look bad, blamed social media for spreading. He even said some of these deaths were just personal decisions, people making bad choices, homeless folks falling in, accidents.
Enough is enough of misinformation, wild speculation by either social media, elected officials, candidates, the media. We do not have any evidence that there is a serial killer loose in Houston, Texas. Let me say that again. There is no evidence that there is a serial killer loose on the streets of Houston. If there was, you would hear it from me first.
But here's what the families were actually dealing with. No answers. Bodies returned to them without explanations. Toxicology reports taking months. Investigations going nowhere. And city officials telling everybody to calm down. Nothing to see here, while their loved ones were found floating in bayous. That don't sound like respect. That sounds like dismissal. And the community saw right through it. One comment said, if it makes the city officials look bad, if it's a serial killer, they'll never claim it. Another said they're protecting his ass. People weren't stupid. They understood politics. They understood how things work when image matters more than truth. And they damn sure understood that when you got 16 bodies and counting, somebody should be taking it more serious than what they were seeing. The frustration was real because alongside all these reassurances from the mayor, there was no action, no increased patrol, no surveillance cameras installed, no task force announced, no FBI called in, just words, empty words telling people not to worry while bodies kept appearing. One person asked the obvious question after the first body, why weren't there people staking out and watching? Another said all they have to do is put up cameras hidden. Basic stuff, common sense stuff, the kind of stuff that happens in investigations when authorities actually taking a threat serious. But none of that was happening, and people noticed. So where was the FBI in all this? Because typically when you got multiple bodies, possible serial offender, local police overwhelmed, that's when the feds get called in. But Houston's a big city. Harris County got resources. They got their own homicide division, medical examiner, crime labs. They don't technically need federal help. But here's what the FBI could have brought to the table. Manpower, the ability to process evidence faster, digital forensics experts, behavioral analysts who specialize in serial offenders, database access to cross-reference cases from other cities. Because remember, some people were saying, maybe this is the same killer from Austin. Lady Bird Lake in Austin had its own string of bodies showing up. Young men mostly, all found in the water. Some people called it the Rainy Street Killer. Authorities there said no serial killer either, just accidents, just drunk people falling in. But what if somebody was moving between cities? What if there was a pattern nobody was seeing because nobody was looking across jurisdictions? The FBI could connect those dots, but they gotta be invited in. And Houston wasn't inviting nobody. Tracy Walder, that former FBI agent, she said it straight up, I don't feel confident that they will be called in because it is a large county with lots of resources. Translation, Houston's pride was getting in the way. They didn't want to admit they needed help, didn't want to admit this was bigger than they could handle, didn't want the attention that comes with the FBI rolling into town. So families kept waiting, the community kept speculating, and bodies kept turning up. Because sometimes what you don't say speaks louder than what you do. They weren't releasing autopsy results. They weren't giving descriptions of how bodies were found. They weren't saying if there were similarities in the conditions of the body. They weren't saying if any of the victims knew each other. They weren't saying if there were signs of struggle. They weren't saying if toxicology showed anything suspicious. All that silence, that's intentional. Either they didn't know, which means the investigations were going nowhere. Or they did know and they weren't telling the public because the truth was worse than speculation. One person in the comments said, "They're not saying the autopsy results of none of the victims." Another said, "They either haven't finished connecting the dots, or they're trying to keep it hush because making things public can spark the killer to stop for a while, making it harder to catch them." Both theories made sense. If you tip your hand too early, if you tell the public what you know, the killer adjusts, changes patterns, goes dormant, makes himself harder to catch. But the flip side is you got a community living in fear because you won't be straight with them. You got people changing their whole lives, avoiding places they love, looking over their shoulders, not knowing if they actually in danger or if officials just covering their own incompetence. That's a hell of a choice to make. And Houston made it. They chose silence over transparency, chose optics over honesty, and the community felt it. So what's life like in Houston right now? For the people actually living through this, scary. That's the simplest answer. It's scary. Buffalo Bayou used to be where people went to decompress. Now it's where people avoid. White Oak Bayou, Brays Bayou, Greens Bayou, all of them got that shadow hanging over them now. That question mark, that what if. Parents aren't letting their kids go near the water. Women aren't jogging alone. People who used to love evening walks by the bayou, they finding new routes, new habits, new places that feel safer, even if safer is just an illusion. One person said, "I wonder if we're talking to the killer right now." A family member, a friend, and we would never know. That's the paranoia that sets in. Because serial killers, they don't look like monsters, they look like regular people. They got jobs, families, they smile at you at the grocery store. They sit next to you at church. They're your neighbor, your coworker, your friend. And in a city of millions, the killer could be anybody. That guy passing by on his bike, that woman walking her dog, that person commenting on social media saying it's all overblown. Somebody said the killer is probably reading our comments and just laughing. Probably, because if there is a killer, if it is one person doing this, he's watching. He's seeing officials dismiss the connection. He's seeing the community argue amongst themselves. He's seeing the fear spread, and he's feeling powerful. That's what serial killers do. They don't just kill. They watch the aftermath. They feed off the chaos. They revisit crime scenes. They inject themselves into investigation. They taunt authorities when they feel confident enough. So yeah, if Houston got a serial killer, he's paying attention, real close attention. But beyond the theories and the speculation and the fear, there are real families dealing with real loss.
Jade McKissick was 21.
She had her whole life ahead of her. She was in college, had dreams, had people who loved her. Now her family planning a funeral instead of a graduation. Rodney Chapman was 43. He had people who depended on him, people who wondering what happened, how he ended up in that water, if he suffered, if somebody hurt him. Seth Hansen was 24. Michaela Miller, Arnulfo Alvarado, Michael Andrea Rice, Anthony Azua, all of them had names, had families, had stories that got cut short. And those families, they stuck in the worst kind of limbo. They know their loved one is gone. They buried them or cremated them or however they chose to say goodbye. But they don't have closure, don't have answers, don't know if justice is even possible when authorities can't decide if crimes were even committed. Imagine that. Imagine losing somebody you love and the city can't tell you how they died, can't tell you if somebody killed them, can't tell you if anybody go and pay for it, can't tell you nothing except we're investigating. Mayor Whitmire talked about respecting families, but respect would look like answers. Respect would look like transparency. Respect would look like doing everything possible to figure out what happened and making sure it don't happen again. Instead, families got press conferences full of reassurances that don't mean nothing when your person's still gone and you still don't know why. Whether officials want to call it a serial killer or not, whether it's one person or 10 people or just a convenient dumping ground for evil, the fact remains 16 bodies, same city, same water, all within months of each other, and nobody got real answers. This case shows you something important about how cities handle fear. When the truth is scary, when the truth makes people uncomfortable, when the truth might hurt tourism or business or the mayor's approval rating, sometimes officials choose to manage perception instead of managing the actual problem. They tell you not to worry. They tell you it's isolated incidents. They tell you to trust the process. And meanwhile, the bodies keep coming. But the people know something's wrong. They feel it, they see it, they living it. And no amount of press conferences gonna convince them otherwise. So what's the lesson here? Simple. Pay attention. Trust your gut. Don't let nobody tell you your fear is irrational when the evidence is right there in front of you. Protect yourself. Protect your people. Stay vigilant. Because at the end of the day, whether Houston got a serial killer or not, they definitely got a Bayou problem. And until somebody takes it serious enough to actually do something about it, that problem gonna keep growing. Bodies gonna keep turning up, families gonna keep losing people, and the community gonna keep asking the same questions that nobody in charge seems willing to answer. So to Houston, stay safe out there, watch your surroundings, travel in groups, avoid the bayous at night, and don't believe everything city officials tell you, especially when your own eyes and ears telling you something different. I said what I said. This has been another case for Unheard Cries TV, where we tell the stories that need to be told, even when people in power wish we would. Stay aware, stay alive.